So with that, I wanted to turn it over to David Bishop, who has a long career in actually not only out-of-home entertainment, but working with international opportunities in this space.
Thank you, Jay. Good morning. I hate following up Kevin. I've known Kevin for a number of years. And whether I agree with Kevin or not, he always makes me think. And I'm sitting here and he's talking and I'm going, oh my God, I really need to follow up on that. I really want to talk about that. And then I promptly forgot about half of it. So hopefully over the course of the next day we can talk about some of that. My name is David Bishop. I work with the Convergence team. I've been working with Andy and the team for a couple of years now. And I'm another entertainment guy. It's kind of weird at a conference like this. I feel a little intimidated. I'm not a cryptocurrency guy. I'm an entertainment guy. It's what I've been doing my whole life since I started playing Dungeons and Dragons in the 70s. And, yes, and I've been doing it ever since. So with that said, I guess I can get closer to the microphone, can't I? What Andy has wanted to do is to try to get some of the team up here so we can talk about it. And I heard that a lot the last couple of days, is you need to meet the team. I'm not the front guy. I'm not a sales guy. I'm the guy that rolls up the shirt sleeves in the background and tries to get stuff done. And to that point, I kind of grew up doing the business. I started working in an arcade while I was in college, just out of my love of games. Decided I wanted to be an electrical engineer, wanted to design games. Blew my dream job, ended up pushing paper for our game companies. So I spent a few decades working for Atari Games, if you guys remember Ataris back in the 80s. And Atari at that point was owned by a company called Namco. And we separated from Atari in 1990 and activated Namco in the United States. And I worked for them until last year, growing the company and starting from just building coin-operated games and having some arcades to what is today one of the big game and toy companies in the world, the Bandai Namco Group. There's about 90 companies in the group, and I ran the company that is today called Namco USA here in America. It's been a great run. Andy has always kind of classifying me as the guy that's supposed to be in the room that's the adult. As part of the team, which scares the hell out of me because I don't think I'm the adult. I'm really passionate about games. I play games almost every day of my life. This is fun for me. I'm really passionate about trying to build a relationship with our players and our guests. We want to try to get them excited about what we're doing, get them immersed in what we're doing. But at the end of the day, games are a real business, and that was something that was beaten into me a long time ago by the founder of Namco. It's a public Japanese company. And so you can imagine that we have meetings to talk about the next meeting. So chaos is something that I struggle with. And that happens a lot around here, apparently. I first met Andy back in the 90s, and it was when Namco first activated, and Andy was plugging VR at that point, and it built really one of the earliest implementations of VR with some of the other members of the team. And it was really exciting, and he was trying to get us to buy it. I ended up not buying it. Because I wasn't quite sure that VR at that point, and frankly it's not that much different today, was more than just a single player tech demo. The social interactivity really wasn't there. It was kind of emulating social interactivity, but it wasn't truly there. And in fairness, now that VR has come back and risen to the top again, it still feels that way to me. A lot of the VR that you see out there is a single player tech demo, and they're struggling to find a way to make this stuff work. And they will. I think it's important, but I think people miss the critical animal here, which is, hey, frankly, it's a technology in search of a solution. I mean, they've got this really cool technology, but nobody knows what to do with it. Until you get it to the point where it's social and interactive, I think we're going to struggle with it from now on. So it's really critical to me, and I think that as we go forward, we've got to go back and build that into the situation. So a few years ago, Andy and I talked over the years, but a few years ago, Andy came up with this new iteration and came back at me again at Namco and wanted to sell this new version of the project. We started talking and started looking at the implications. I was like, you know what, this is becoming a lot more realistic. This is making a lot more sense to me. And I saw the potential, and Andy and I have talked about it a lot. I ended up saying, you know what, I want to be a part of this. I mean, I've spent a lot of time with Bandai Namco. I love those guys. It's a great company. They do a lot of really cool stuff. But the problem you have with any big company that's out there doing things, and it's not necessarily my old employer, but it's an entire industry that Kevin was talking about. And Kevin did a great job of doing an overview of what that industry looks like for out-of-home entertainment. But people get really comfortable doing what they're doing. When you have a company that's been around for a long time and they're really good at it, they get relatively comfortable, and it's harder and harder to move people into a new direction. And I was in a situation where I get really excited by entertaining people. I get really excited by doing something different. And I saw the opportunity here to really have an impact on what was happening in the entertainment space, and frankly, disrupting the way the traditional entertainment and game business works. And I think that's what you're going to see happening here. As we talked about doing the concept, we started talking about how do we evangelize this, how do you do it, and that helped develop out the project that you guys are going to hear a lot more about from other people, which is the Nexus Station and the Silicon Nexus and what convergence is really all about. The interesting thing was, because we've been doing this a long time, we've been building game environments, we've been putting people in them, we've been building economies inside the game environments, but again, it was a closed system. You had this closed ecosystem, and if any money you got into it, we couldn't really get out of it. So as we started putting that together for our next project, and it makes a lot of sense, and it's really viable, but suddenly, Andy one day comes up and starts talking about the blockchain, and I'm going, what? What are you guys talking about? And I actually had to go research it. I was like, okay, I don't want to sound like an idiot, but what's going on here? And suddenly it made a lot of sense. Suddenly we've got a way to validate that in-game currency and to make it work in other ways. So it's not just a currency for in-game, but in other parts of the experience. Because I don't even call what we're doing a game. It's more of an experience. We're building a platform for experience and allowing people to interact with each other. And that's what's exciting to me. When you can get people to interact socially and do things together, that's how you get them to come back, that's how you build engagement, that's how you get people excited and become ambassadors for what you're doing. I don't want to bore you guys with this stuff because it's all entertainment related, but I really see the way that we can change the way people work together. Blockchain obviously enables a lot of that, and I don't need to tell you guys about all that. About how it's going to work with cross-platform implementations. And the reason I got excited about the concept early on was, strictly speaking, that cross-platform interaction. There's a lot of reasons it doesn't exist. Technically, it can exist. It doesn't really exist that well. What we're building is a platform that does enable that. It makes it a lot easier to implement. And so we can build communities across those platforms and let them interact and then take that experience outside of even the platform that we're building. And that's where I get really, really excited about how we disrupt all this. So from my standpoint, it really comes down to social interaction. And I think that's the part that people miss with entertainment. If we don't have the social side, you'll get some brief spikes in entertainment when you're talking about it. But unless you can get people to interact together, it's not really going to hang together. That's how you build it up to make it work. Our core objectives, even though we've kind of built this thing now to expand a pretty ambitious project, but the core objective really hasn't changed from the day that we started talking about this, which is how do you grab people, how do you grab their eyeballs, how do you grab their hearts and get them to work together and interact with each other. And that's really what we're trying to get accomplished today. The other neat thing we're doing that is kind of the disruptive part, and it's not really obvious necessarily looking at it from a distance. Today, the release of product, particularly AAA product, if you're doing really big game titles, it's an 8-figure investment, it's a lot of money, and it's like making movies. I mean, you spend a lot of money, you spend a lot of time on it, and when you get it out there, you're never 100% sure how it's going to come out. You can do focus groups, you can test, but you're never really going to know how it's going to be received until you get it in people's hands. And it's controlled very tightly by some pretty large players. There's a huge development community out there, huge, particularly independent game developers. I know a lot of them, and they're fabulous people, but they struggle because they all want to design games, they want to be part of the entertainment community, but they have struggled to how to find a way to get into that community because it's so tightly controlled. And every college out there has a program for you can be a game designer, you can have a degree in game technology, and it's really tough to get a job doing that stuff. It almost feels criminal to me sometimes when they do this. So what we're trying to do is find a way to build a mechanism so the game developers can actually contribute to what we're putting together, and they get rewarded for it. And we're building a much closer, tighter bridge between the developer and the user than what has been done before. And that's where it starts to disrupt the industry, because a lot of people don't want to see that for their own economic reasons, obviously. So for us, when we start talking about, and you'll hear about, we'll talk about how we implement AR and VR. Those are tools. I mean, they're not the end all. They're things that we use to get people excited to work together. And there'll be another tool next year and another tool after that. And Kevin did a great job of expanding on some of the different segments of the industry that kind of narrowed down. But there are all ways that we can get people to work together. And at the end of the day, though, as we start to talk about this and talk about the in-game economy, or the in-experience economy, I should say, because I think it's more than just a single game, it really comes down to, and I was inspired by Anita's presentation yesterday, where she talks about it's really about faith and trust. So if we don't have the trust of the players and the faith from the players that this is valid and fair systems, and that it's transparent and it's open, then it's never going to work. So we've got to get buy-in from everybody that's involved in the project. So a lot of what we've been doing, and a lot of what I've been talking about with the team, is how do we build systems that make it completely transparent? How do we ensure that every player, every participant in the experience understands exactly what's going on, and they know what's happening, so that they feel ownership in the environment, they feel ownership in the game, and they believe in what we're doing, so that they feel like it's fair and it's open. And that's a big part of the governance for us, is building the systems that will inspire that faith in them. And the loss of trust was a trigger moment for me yesterday. I was like, okay, well, that's obviously what we're dealing with, is people just don't trust anybody anymore. So we have to work extra hard to make sure that they can trust what we're doing. It's a big part of the Silicon Nexus conversation that we're having. Andy and the guys are going to talk a lot more about this, so I don't want to get into all the details on it, and I don't want to drag this up, so we're trying to shorten some time here. But that's kind of where we're at, and that's who I am. Any questions? Okay, Jay?
Thank you, David. David is nothing if not efficient in getting it said.